listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Week 15 preview for Monday, December 9th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
It's truly the home stretch. Turner for home in the NFL season. 3 weeks remain in the regular season. And there's a dogfight going on for playoff spots, buys, wild cards, and motivation becomes such a big thing for the odds makers to take into account. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas, and to try to get between the ears of one of those top shelf odds makers, we call on the man, Jack, to help us get the fun started in our look at the openers for week 15 of the NFL. Hi, Jack. What's the quick summation of the weekend? Big takeaways for you.
I'll tell you the truth. Naturally, the most entertaining game was New Orleans and San Francisco. It's a shame that wasn't a Sunday or Monday night game. New England struggles continue. Mahomes hurts his hand. Brady hurts his elbow. Injuries always a key factor. Winston broke his little finger, I believe. So the quarterback injuries and just injuries in general this time of year from the wear and tear of the season-long battle.
Boy, we talk about key numbers in football, and it's funny. It was pretty early in the day when he did it, and I remember looking at a sportsbook director buddy of mine, and he said, "You watch them lose this game because he did that." Wait, what is Sean Payton thinking going for two so early in a football game? I mean, it sounds like Monday morning quarterbacking. It isn't. It was the minute he did it. It's like, why would you do that? You send the whole game off kilter where you're always chasing a point. And sure enough, at the end, San Fran goes down and beats him because of something he did for no reason 2.5 hours earlier.
I'm sure. I don't know if he freelanced on his own or his sabermetrics guys tell him this is the thing to do. I don't know. I'd have to have all that data laid out in front of me. But my knee-jerk reaction is to agree with you. I mean, it's a point early. You're scoring almost at will, so there's going to be a lot more points in the game. Other opportunities will come up to go for two. And the reason they had to be so careful, Breeze had to ground that when they went for 2 points on the last play, he had almost, when it was covered, he had to throw it in the ground because you can't afford a pickoff for a 2-point run back.
That's a great observation. I mean, he did. He threw that into the ground. He wasn't taking any chance. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great. So not only did it force him to go for two, but it forced him to not really put his best foot out there going for two because of the risk-reward deal. That's a great point.
So that was Peyton's weekend.
At Peyton's place, I guess. All right, let's go to it. We look ahead. The Jets at Baltimore. Baltimore goes to Buffalo, gets the win. Both sides of the ball, really, really good. And now the Jets are, you would think, walking into a bit of a buzzsaw here. But, for Baltimore playing these kind of high-octane games, the Niners going on the road to Buffalo, this is a big, big number to cover.
This is a giant number to cover. Against a Jet team, has its ups and downs, but they've had some more high points and low points over the last 4 or 5 weeks. We opened this game at we opened at 14.5. We're still at 14.5. The total's gone up to 45. I see it sinking in a few places to 44.5. It's a very difficult. We know by the point spread that Baltimore is a much more talented team. That's obvious. Can they have a letdown off of what they just did playing San Francisco, playing at Buffalo, and the Jets really in a sort of a carefree moment for the game? I think the situation favors the Jets for a letdown. I think it'll sink to 14 and maybe a little 13.5.
All right, let's move on with Tampa Bay and Detroit. What was the belief, before the weekend? Bottom line is Tampa Bay can go up and down the field with anybody, Jack. They just can't stop anybody. And boy, I'll tell you, you come back and you get the best of the Colts like this. Arians has these guys believing.
He has them believing. He has them trying. And honestly, at halftime, I looked at the numbers because we were preparing to put up a halftime. and Indianapolis had 107 yards, and Tampa Bay had 307, and they were behind by 6 points at the time. No, they were behind by 17-14. They played a game like that against Jacksonville or Tennessee a few weeks before that, where the yardage is all them, but those turnovers, not only turnovers for touchdowns, at one point it becomes too much. This should be an above 500 ball club, and it's not. I don't think it's Arians' fault. It's Winston with the turnovers like we talk about every week.
You know, the funny thing I would ask you, because we always try to discern which way numbers will go, you give the Lions credit. They're playing hard. This poor season for them, I had such promise. If you go back to the first 5-6 weeks of the season, and then of course the Stafford injury, but the defense has been playing hard. The rub, Jack, to me, I mean, they deserve full marks. Holding Minnesota to 20, but I think that was a big letdown spot for Minnesota. But their defense is playing good against Washington, Chicago, and then maybe Minnesota in a letdown spot. I could see Tampa Bay putting up a balloon number here. Do you think this number goes up? If anything, I think it goes up. I don't know. Do the sharps come in on the Lions here plus the points? I don't think so.
Well, Saturday we put this up at 347.5. Then we didn't put it back up this morning because of Winston's injury. They think he'll play, but we just want reassurance on that because the drop off to Griffin, I think, would be significant. As a matter of fact, I think one of our handicappers had that as perhaps a 2.5 point difference. So we didn't put it back up. The places that are went up to 4. Blau didn't look good for Detroit yesterday. There's only one way to play this game, Tampa Bay. As you said, the Detroit defense yesterday gave an all-out effort, but they were on the field for the whole game, and you just can't do it. And I got to correct myself. It's a 3.5 point difference between Griffin and Winston. So our guy had Tampa Bay 5.5, Winston in, and 2 with him out.
So, okay, amazing. We're going bananas on the Tampa Detroit here. But late in the week, this would be one, right? We get clarity on Winston's number. Even if Griffin comes in, I don't know that anybody's stepping up to the plate to go nuts with Detroit. But if Winston's, they say good to go, that's a number probably goes up.
It goes up. Like I said, it probably will go into the 5 point range.
Philly and Washington, Jack, thought process hanging the number. And, of course, we've got to wait on the Monday night game.
The Monday night game tonight will affect us slightly. We opened Philly on the road 6-40. Washington, I guess the Eagles off a win tonight would probably go up to 7. I don't think it can go any higher. Washington, a creditable game. I mean, they're just they're an offensively challenged team, and their defense hung in there with Green Bay. But it's much like the Detroit situation. There's so much pressure on the defense on the field all the time that eventually you succumb and the opponent wins. But I think this game would be probably 7 with a total in the area of 41.
All right. I mean, the bottom line is, Jack, that's a look ahead spot for Philly. Again, we'll see what happens with the Monday night game. And if you think Dallas has been underachieving and they get all the publicity, flying under the radar how bad they've been playing is Philadelphia. But the bottom line is it's going to come down to a one-game shootout between Philly and Dallas, and this is a look-ahead spot for Philly in that regard.
Right. If Philly takes care of business tonight, they're tied with Dallas, and then that one game will be for the division.
Then we go, interesting, they hate each other, and that you get each team's best shot. Chicago's at Green Bay, and the Bears remain breathing here. The number is interesting to me because it's in a zone here that could go one way or the other. And Green Bay, I mean, we know Chicago has limitations. We keep thinking what the ceiling is for Green Bay, but boy, they just don't impress for long stretches of football games.
Yeah, they're not as good as their 10-3 record. We opened Green Bay 6.5, and just as you're talking about, it was bet down to 4 by this morning, and the total 41. It's all factors favor Chicago, I believe. I mean, Green Bay, yes, they have a one-game lead in their division. Chicago, one more loss, and they'll basically be eliminated from the playoffs. Trubisky, we'll see what happens. He's played better the last few weeks, but 4 seems like a reasonable number in this rivalry game, and I don't see it going back up.
Then New England is at Cincinnati, and now they've got breathing room. Buffalo loses the game, so New England win the AFC East in all likelihood, and this is about getting right when the playoffs get here, although it sure looks like they're going to have to at some point go on the road, which is a difference maker. But one thing I would say is Cincinnati, they are playing hard from what I can see, and Dalton gives them a puncher's chance. But, Jack, New England continually, they've got to resort to trick plays to put points on the board. It's almost smoke and mirrors, isn't it?
It is, and I think they're doing it very well, as indicated by their 10-3 record. But they struggle every game now. And if they said Brady came out of there with a banged up elbow, and every week, I know you can never believe the New England injury reports, but there's always something nagging at him. Aside from age and these injuries, as you said, Cincinnati, since Dalton came back at quarterback there, they crushed the Jets. They played respectably against a Cleveland team that's probably average at best. But they'd have to be a live dog here. This game was 11 on Saturday morning and 40. Right now it's down to 9. I see 9.5 and 10 dog money out there. And the total sinking a little probably because of the Brady information. If Brady is healthy or reported has good practices, the game probably goes back to 10 because New England is better, much better on defense, and their offense, they can handle Cincinnati offensively. But if there's any concerns about Brady, this probably slips down to 8.
All right, then crazy, but I think we have to call this the game of the week, and that's Houston and Tennessee. Did you hang 3 for a starter, Jack, on the home side here, or was it lower and based on the result of the weekend with Houston really just spitting the bit and Tennessee continues to look good? Did that number come up after the games were played Sunday?
After the games were played Sunday, this game was 3, as you said. It is the AFC South, and every home team is a 3-point favorite, and they are 3 and 48.5. I think Tennessee is the right side in this game. Tennessee, with Tannehill at quarterback there, I mean, he's averaging 8 yards net yards per attempt, which is probably as good as there is in the league. They have some problems defensively since they've improved on offense, but they still get more turnovers than they give away. So Houston, that was a tough loss yesterday, and they were installed. There was a 9-point favorite, bet down to 8, but Denver dominated them. This game it can only go up. I don't think it goes below 3.
I got to ask you now. Weather can be a thing, but Tennessee's on a 7-game over hot streak since Tannehill took over. And they go up and down the field, and then they do have defensive breakdowns. And we know Watson's got all kinds of weapons, although you wonder, what happened to them yesterday. Doesn't the total look a little low just based on the way they've been playing? It's funny. I mean, big game, playoff game, and usually AFC South games, okay, punch each other in the mouth. The funny thing is, I think these two teams' current form, it looks like a track meet, even though you would think with the importance it wouldn't be played that way.
I think your point is very valid. I thought this was perhaps – we opened at 47.5. We were given – basically it was kicked around 47. We raised it a little just basically on your thinking, but the public thought even more that you were right, and it's up to 49 right now. And I think it was 48.5 when we started the conversation.
But listen, I'll tell you, if Tennessee were to win this game, and they play each other twice in the last 3 weeks, so this is going to be a really interesting little push there, specifically in that division. But boy, I'll tell you, Tennessee's not a team I think I'd be wanting to step in front of right now. The crazy thing is, if they just committed to the run, Derrick Henry would be leading the league in rushing by a country mile. But his threat has made Tannehill a really good quarterback. They got weapons.
It is. They love to throw the ball right now. And every now and then they run something up the middle, and he breaks out for 10, 12 yards. And, okay, I got to respect that too. I can't stop both. And that's what makes a good offense. Seattle's
at Carolina. Long travel for Seattle. Hard-fought game for the Seahawks. And they fought till the end, but that was playing the Rams, who were a cornered rat. The one thing you're looking at, I think more than anything here, is the travel that keeps this number palatable. But Carolina, not as bad as Jacksonville, but the bus is pretty warm here in Carolina.
It is. Plus, you throw in the turmoil of a coaching change in the middle of the week last week. Seattle, we opened as a 5-point favorite. They're currently up to 6. The total is 48.5. Now, Carolina still does enjoy throwing the ball. Again, I think this could be one of those totals that's a little low. And as you said, Seattle traveling, that's not always great. It hurts Seattle overall, but I think defensively you may not wake up for a while. So I think over could be the right play in this one as it would be in the Tennessee game. But Seattle is a 6-point favorite. I think if they want to, they handle this team very easily. It's just the intangibles that you spoke about going West Coast to East Coast and playing that morning game that could be a problem.
Let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. All right, Denver's at Kansas City, Jack, and I think the Chiefs are going to be a real challenge for you and your brethren. Kansas City's die's pretty much been cast. They're going to win the AFC West. I think they kind of know where they're going to stand. They're not getting the 1 or 2 seed, it would seem. They're probably going to finish ahead of the AFC South winner. So they kind of know where they're going to be. So it's one of these things maybe to fine tune, but from an intensity aspect, it's a division foe. The Lock kid comes in, he looks good. You got a short sample size to deal with him. But at some point, I'd be watching Kansas City in the next 3 weeks that Reed really, I think, is going to have an option to be resting guys. And that's something you just don't know, which makes it a challenge to put a number on them, doesn't it?
And the challenge is that we had this game 13 and 46.5 before the weekend. Mahomes hurts his hand. The places that have it up now have it 11.5 and 11. And we really can't do anything until we find out if Mahomes is in, because basically the breakdown is about 5 points. With Mahomes in there and them going all out, Kansas City's like 12 and 47. With him out of the game, Kansas City's no more than 7 and 43.5.
And the one thing, at least, right, we got to look at more earlier in the year, so we know he can maneuver that offense, but and not just the hand. I mean, Mahomes was a crash test dummy in that game.
What's fascinating yesterday was New England must have done everything they could just to take the long ball away, because everything Mahomes threw was short. Either that or his hand just hurt him so much that's all he could do. I was just observing as the game went along. Everything seemed to be underneath.
You're absolutely right. And then some of the few times he did go downfield, the ball was like a dying quail. I mean, it seemed like everything was underthrown down the field.
And I guess that would have to be – so indications are that it really was his hand was affecting him.
Yeah. All right. Okay, bud. Miami and the Giants, these two teams know where they stand for a long time. How important is the Monday night game here for this one? We're seeing a consensus of 3.5, but we're talking Eli Manning back in the fold. Is this a number that will have, instant mashed potatoes reaction Tuesday morning based on what happens Monday night and see how Manning looks?
Yes. If Manning plays, if they just hang in this game, whether they cover or not, if they lose by 14 or 7, and Manning plays somewhat respectably, it wouldn't matter at all. The number would still be 3.5 and 48. However, if he gives them a spark and somehow they manage to make it a very tight game and he plays well, this number would certainly go up. Meanwhile, Miami and Fitzpatrick, they're hanging in against everybody, but we have to wait and see after all these weeks off, is Manning going to do it? And actually, Jones could come back next week. So you just don't know.
The odd quirk here, I didn't even realize this was happening, but I remember in the first 2 weeks of the season, we're like, wow, look at this. Buffalo's playing back-to-back weeks in the same stadium. Well, Miami's repeating the feat. I mean, Buffalo's different than Miami. Buffalo beat the Jets and the Giants. Miami just lost to the Jets, and they're going right back to the same stadium. So it's that same quirky thing that we saw at the beginning of the year for somebody.
Right. And when this is a fascinating game, it's been flexed to the Sunday night game. Pittsburgh opened pick and 37. Right now it's 1.5 minus a little money and 37. They expect Connor back this week. They're not sure about Smith-Schuster, which would be a big factor. They played a decent game against Arizona yesterday, but it was a strange call by Kingsbury going for they had fourth down. They could have kicked the field goal, cut it to a touchdown, and they chose not to. And then later they scored the touchdown that would have tied the game, but by then it was too late. But Pittsburgh played reasonably well. Buffalo made a great comeback against Baltimore. Baltimore had to hang on to the very last offensive play from Buffalo. But I think it's a tough spot for the Bills coming off the Baltimore game, as you've often alluded to. You usually physically beat up.
Yeah.
And now they're going into Pittsburgh, who's definitely a physical team on defense. And I think the situation favors the Steelers.
Yeah, the Sunday night flex. Well, the crazy thing is how things can change on a dime. Buffalo kind of on cruise control in the span of 24 hours. Had they scored on that last play and New England was losing, Buffalo doesn't punch it in, they would have controlled their own destiny to be the 1 seed. Now, all of a sudden, Jack, they go with only a 1-game lead to Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh wins, Pittsburgh actually leapfrogs them.
Right. Pittsburgh's sitting there at 8-5, and Buffalo at 9-4, and they'll get the tiebreaker. They'll both be 9-5, and Pittsburgh would have the tiebreaker.
It's funny. I was thinking about this myself before the numbers popped up, and it's kind of right where I thought it was, and maybe even conceivably could have been even a point and a half lower, which would be almost unheard of in an NFL game. But honestly, the way these two defenses are going, and Allen did struggle against the Ravens, and no great disgrace in that. But where do the points come from in this game?
I would guess from the defense. It's going to have to be turnovers. Yeah. I mean, Hodges, I don't think is going to light up the Buffalo defense. Conversely, I think Buffalo possesses the threat of Allen breaking out of the pocket and hitting a big play. Staying in the pocket, I think he would have his problems. But Buffalo, I think, has more upside for the big play on a scramble.
All right, sir. I don't say this often. Well, we'll see what the market does with it. In the NFL, I don't think you see bad numbers very often. I think it is a bad number. Jacksonville has quit. The Raiders blew it against Tennessee. It was kind of their last gasp, but it was still kind of an uphill climb. Gruden is not going to let these guys quit on John Gruden, and they're moving to Vegas and all the things that go with it. And Marrone is a dead man walking. This number I'm seeing, it's a mixed bag, Jack. I'm just telling you, by the end of the week, this thing's got to get to 7. And to me, it may even go higher than that.
I see your point, and I think it's a very valid point. We opened Oakland 4 and 44.5. Right now we're at 6 and 45.5. I see some 6.5 out there. It's a spot where, as you said, the difficulty is just going by the numbers. If you go by the yardage and this and that, it's a more closely contested game. But the problem is factoring in how much Jacksonville is throwing in the towel and how much Oakland is going to try. Oakland was basically eliminated yesterday. I mean, they're going to have a tough time getting there. So it's the emotion, which we're good at massaging for a point or two. Here's a bad situation. Here's an up or down. Here's a home field. Here's more rested. This is just, okay, does this team really want to play at all? And that's
is this a game though? I guess the question, and I could be dead wrong. I mean, they're pros, they're playing for jobs. You could see it 3 weeks ago. Jacksonville's quit, and maybe there's one last gasp effort in them. I guess, but do you run the risk of really getting cited and having a horrible decision in an NFL game? I mean, if this number just keeps freight training. It's not often the books put themselves in a weird spot, right, with an NFL game. I'm just curious if conceivably you'd be begging people to bet Jacksonville. I don't know who would step up with monopoly money to bet these guys.
Well, that's why you do have to judge the face at the counter. I mean, if you know it's somebody smart and they're playing it, you have to anticipate that it's going up. You have to move it, maybe even react to offset his money. So you try not to get in that part where, we've gone from 4 to 6. We probably have very little decision to it. I mean, we can start fresh right now. But I think if this game It may, like you say, it may get to 7. If you get to 7.5, there's going to be somebody out there taking it.
Two teams, I guess Cleveland, on life support, but Cleveland, Arizona. Arizona's playing hard. It's just, 1 week to the next. Maybe they just, Murray's learning on the job. Mayfield still has a ways to go. The crazy thing, Jack, I knew it before and said it all last week. Oh, well, you wait till you see the Pittsburgh-Arizona game, and said it'll be like a home game for Pittsburgh. They showed a shot on the last drive of that game. My jaw dropped. It was in Arizona. It was all the lower bowl of the stadium. It was all Steeler fans. That was insane.
That does, yeah. It has to. That's a big discount for the home field advantage for Arizona. I don't know if it'll be the same way for Cleveland. I think Pittsburgh is basically a more popular team, but as you said, it won't be a stadium full of Arizona fans, and I guess that's deserved. Although they did have a good run a few years ago when Arians was there with Warner. But somehow they just never get that fan support that is necessary in the NFL.
All right, this is an intriguing one for me. Tell me just lay it out for me, what you saw on the weekend going in the Atlanta game at San Fran.
Atlanta at San Fran. I saw San Francisco move the ball much better than I thought they could against the New Orleans defense. I saw their defense exploit it by a very good quarterback who's up in age, and I questioned his arm earlier in the year, but who put on a great performance yesterday. I don't think Ryan can do that. I think they'll get more. The problem with Atlanta is their offensive line, and he won't be afforded the protection that Breeze was. And I think that'll be the difference in the game. He'll be prone to more big mistakes. This game open 12. It's currently at 10.5 minus money. That's based off of, hey, San Francisco played at Baltimore and played a very tough game. They went down to New Orleans and they played a thrilling game. This has to be the letdown game. And I think that's why it's gone down. But I don't know if Atlanta has the talent to take advantage of it. I think the smart guys bet it down to 10, but I don't know if they win.
The 10 would be the floor. Yeah. No, but and you kind of read my mind there. I was just going to say, you play Green Bay, Baltimore, and New Orleans. I mean, that's a gauntlet. San Francisco answered the bell in every game. How do they sustain that level of intensity? That's one of the unique things about doing this. I mean, the spread is the great equalizer. We know who the better team is.
Right. And this is what we talked about with the other game where it was difficult with Jacksonville. Here, okay, we know San Francisco probably should be 13.5 if this were a playoff game. But it's not, and it's the letdown. Okay, so we're down to the 10.5 range.
All right, then we go to another intriguing one: the Rams at Dallas, and it's the Rams, right? They look like maybe to a degree they're back. I mean, not completely back, but it seems like they're making this big final push, and whether it's going to be good enough at the end of the day remains to be seen. And Dallas and Philly, I think, have just been in this mode for a month that they're all focused on that basically the one game's going to decide the whole damn thing.
Well, unfortunately, Philly was in that mode when they played Miami a week ago, and they paid the price for it.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of these teams can afford to stub their toe, which is probably why I think Philadelphia put out a good, focused effort tonight. And although Dallas wants to do the same thing this weekend, I really don't know if they're better than the Rams. I think it's very close at this point. The Rams turned in a good game last night against a decent Seattle team. They crushed Arizona the week before, and Arizona went and made Pittsburgh play it as hard as they could. And the smart people thought the Rams are much better than Pittsburgh for the same reason. When they played each other, there was a lot of money for the Rams, and it was a very fortunate win for the house when Pittsburgh beat them, and that was basically on turnovers. So I think the Rams are the better team, and I think we opened this game 3 minus money on Saturday. We're down to 2 dog money right now, and I think it probably goes to 1.
There you go. That's what I was just going to ask you. And sometimes the number the indicator. 2 is kind of a weird number. 1.5, 2. That I'm not saying it could get to that point, but I mean, if once something like that starts steaming in that area, I mean, it's a game where it could conceivably get the pick, and maybe even the Rams won. But I mean, there's no way in the world this is going to 3.
No. We've had 3, and it disappeared, and I don't think it's going back because you can't make the argument that Dallas is a better team. The quarterbacks, do you want to argue? I don't know. The Ram defense is just as good, if not better, than Dallas. Matter of fact, Dallas had their first turnover in, I think, 5 or 6 ball games last week. So and that didn't turn out well for them either. They had the turnover and they still got killed by Chicago. So I think it has to be the Ram money. And plus, both teams fighting for a playoff game, so they're both up for it. So we'll see what happens.
All right, then we move on the home stretch here. Minnesota on the road at the Chargers. Yeah, what was the thought process heading into the weekend? Minnesota, they got by, and they've got bigger fish to fry. The one thing it sounds like, and I doubt he's worth anything in relation to the number, but I do think it's going to be a big deal. And I don't know if they ease him in or if he's back full-fledged, but when Thielen comes back, that really changes the dynamic for Minnesota. Minnesota at the Chargers. What do you got here?
Minnesota, we opened 3 and 46. Currently, it's 3 dog money and 45.5. I see 2.5s out there, so 2.5 is probably three dog money and 2.5 for the same number anyway. So I see your point about Thielen is excellent because what he does is Diggs is having a decent year after a slow start, but when he's on the other side, one of them gets one-on-one coverage, and that guy usually beats his opponent. So it makes a big difference for this offense. And I think that some of the struggles the last few weeks have been because he's out. I don't know if he's back this week. We'll check into that as the week goes on. If he's in, I think Minnesota is a solid 3-point favorite. If he's out, I think Minnesota is a 2-point favorite.
Yeah, and not only, you're right. I mean, Diggs is, having to shoulder the load against double coverage, and he's still coming through. But you bring him in, then you got Rudolph can kill you, and then they got the 2 terrific running backs. Minnesota could be a really dangerous team here, getting the hot hand at the end of the year. It is the thing, for argument's sake, and maybe it's just a perception thing, but if they say Thielen's back, he practiced in full, and the whole thing's going on, this is a total I could see conceivably going up 1.5 or 2, possibly. I can see if that announcement comes down, Thielen's in, that people start seeing offense galore, and that's Rivers, right? Rivers, gunslinger, and he'll get you points, backdoor cover, but he'll make a horrible mistake too.
He will. He's like Winston is a younger version of Rivers. I mean, except maybe to the extreme, but yeah, he will make key mistakes at key times. We've seen him play, and he's so good most of the time. It's just that one moment that stands out like a sore thumb when he throws that pick that's inexplicable.
All right, Jack, and then we wrap it up with the Monday night game, Indy at New Orleans. Boy, that was a punch to the gut for both teams, honestly. Both Indy and New Orleans kind of licking their wounds coming into this one.
Right. It took Indy basically out of the playoff race. They needed that win, and they had ample opportunity. Although they were outplayed, they had ample opportunity to get it through some of the turnovers. We opened this game 8.5. Right now we have 9. I see 8 minus money and 8.5 out there. The total was 44. It's been bet up to 46. I think that's off of Breeze looking as good as he did yesterday against a very good defense. I just don't see this number coming down. I think it's more important to New Orleans to win this game. I think they'll be more motivated than Indianapolis. Indianapolis has to win every game from here on out, and I don't think they're going to do it.
Final question for you, though. Okay, 44 up to 45.5, 46. When you see an instant reaction to something like that, as the week would roll on and kickoff would get closer, and then, oh, by the way, you've got all day Sunday, and people are going to hook this game up with teasers and parlays and things of that nature. Do you think that total continues to go up?
I think it will. I mean, if you look at yesterday's game, when you have two teams scoring that many points, they scored 94 points yesterday.
Yeah.
So they put up 46 on San Francisco. Your immediate thought is they're going to score in the 30s against Indianapolis. And plus, their offense probably averages in the high 20s anyway, so it wouldn't be a stretch. And if Indianapolis throws in the towel at all, and this will be their second game in a row on the road, and they've overcome injuries, and despite all that and all their kicking problems, if they win yesterday, they're in the hunt. Now they're not. So it goes up.
Yeah, and as we said, wrap it up with this, Jack, and we kind of maybe broached the subject last week, the last couple of weeks, when you get to the final month of the season and some teams that are out of it, and now you've got other teams that maybe are added to that list. It's the challenge you have to put something up, but those gray areas are there for the market as well in terms of motivation, and that's the odd dynamic when you get these final 3 weeks of the year.
Well, that's why so many people do as much research on info as they can to get a I know you can't believe all the quotes that come from coaches or players, but you try and get some that are respectable and basically honest, and you try and read something into it, and that's all you can do.
You had said earlier, and I forget the game you alluded to, but you said you were watching in the eyeball test. To me matters. Power ratings and things of that nature. Are you able? And how important is it for you personally? Because I know there are some guys, they don't even watch a game, right? I mean, they're okay. Here are my power ratings. Home field this, blah blah blah, and hang a number. But you're standing there saying you do watch the games. How big an edge do you find that is for you personally, being able to maybe see the forest through the trees a little bit by watching these games?
First, I enjoy it. Second, I think it helps a little. If you see a guy threw 3 interceptions, but you saw the game and you saw, well, the receiver had the ball in his hands, it went out of his hands and went to the guy, you can say, no, that's really not an interception. That's on the receiver. He wasn't as bad as indicated. Maybe I can have more hope, more trust in this guy. Their defense played well. If you watch the Wisconsin-Ohio State game the other night, it was a very tough college game, but you could tell at the end Wisconsin was just worn down and beat just from the pressure. Their offense only got 23 yards in the second half. So you're looking at a game and you're saying, I know this Wisconsin defense is better, but they can't do it right now because they're exhausted.
Oh, my God, I could do this all day with you. But I swear on a Bible, this is the last question. But like the Baylor-Oklahoma game, like I'm sitting there going, okay, past games, or you watch that first game, just what you said, that Oklahoma wore them down, but Baylor could play with them. So I just said, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen at the end of that game, but I know Baylor's going to play with them for a long time. And I just took the game out of the equation, and I played Baylor in the first half, and it worked, and they actually hung with them the entire game. But how about people at this time of year? Does the first half play get a bump? Do more people go away from the whole game? I don't know what's going to happen over the course of the whole game, but do more people get involved in the first half at this time of the year in the NFL?
I think even for throughout the year, I think they do. I think the general belief is that the better team is going to crush a weaker opponent in the first half. So when the game is like 13, 12 and a half, you'll see 7 in the first half, if not 7.5, because people are going to say they're going to jump on them. And they've all watched football games. Everybody comes back. You build the big lead, then the other team comes back, and the point spread is in doubt. But as you said, in all sports, the better team, they always like them in the first half.
There you go. And rest is going to come into the equation here at the end, too.
Sure.
Jack, it's always terrific information. Really appreciate your time. I know it's a busy, busy day for you. Always great stuff, Jack. Thanks. Have a great week.
My pleasure. You have a good weekend.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.